Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I'm bringing you some D&D content, as it seems you guys have really been loving those old D&D videos that I posted here on my channel, or YouTube's recommending them. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I've been getting a lot of comments and stuff on my last couple of D&D videos. So I thought it might be time as well, because I have a bit of a D&D update for you, to do a little tour of my campaign journal, my D&D journal, as I like to call it. I have actually unfortunately stopped playing D&D simply because just time-wise it was difficult to commit to our group and our campaign. As much as we were loving it and we love our DM and we love our friends that we play with, it just is a little too hard with what we have going on. And especially with a toddler at home who has, you know, a busy schedule and a bedtime and all that good stuff, it makes playing D&D weekly late at night very exhausting for two parents. Anywho, that said, I haven't really been playing D&D and I haven't really done anything new in this particular journal. So I thought that it would be a good time to just kind of like capture in this moment a little bit of a flip through of what's in there and what I've been, you know, what I've done up until this point. Even though I'm no longer playing, at least we'll have it nice and documented before I stow it away in a shelf or back into my D&D drawer to maybe one day see the light of day. I'm not entirely sure. But anywho, I have my players sheet out just for right now because my white balance was getting a little kooky town. But just a quick little backstory on who this character is. Her name is Rowan. She is a human warlock. It was very early in our campaign, so we really didn't get very far. At the time that I stopped playing, she was only a level 2 warlock. So, you know, it was very early on in the campaign, but we were really taking our time, and it was a homebrew, totally 100% homebrew campaign situation. But with that, we each kind of created these really in-depth sort of characters. So Rowan, just a quick little backstory, and I'm sure I've talked about her in some of my other D&D videos, but since you're about to see kind of the journal and the artwork and the illustrations that are in there, I really kind of want to give you a brief little backstory. Rowan is part of a coven of witches in a very secretive group, a coven called the Daughters of the Unseen. She basically lived her entire life secluded in the forest within this coven of all women. She doesn't know men. There's an interesting backstory as far as how children are born and raised, all girls, of course, in the forest, so it's kind of interesting. She's very kind of quiet to herself, but at moments can be kind of out of place and have her outbursts because she really doesn't understand sort of social rules and how to get along with other people, again, because she's been in the woods her whole life. And the reason why she left the woods and basically her call to adventure is that she is about to embark on her rite of passage, which is to leave the coven and experience basically some sort of life-changing thing or experience something to which her patron will then tell her when it is time to return back to the woods, back to the coven. So that is kind of the general gist of her. I kind of visualize her. Sorry, my pug is making noise. Dante! When I was creating Rowan, I really kind of visualized her like the, oh God, what's the girl from Breakfast Club where she puts like the cereal, or she puts the Cheetos or the cereals in her sandwich and she kind of has her hood up and she kind of just keeps to herself? Yeah, that's basically kind of Rowan, but just with pink hair and magic skills. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that is my little player sheet there and my spells. That was my old player sheet from when I played as a tiefling barbarian, Helena. Oh, loved playing her. Anywho, let's get to the journal flip here. So it's a little messy in the beginning because I was definitely still kind of getting my footing as far as how I wanted to take notes. Of course, all my D&D peeps out there, you know how important it is to take notes as you go. And I definitely learned after the last campaign that we played for not many, but we played for a few years. I was in that campaign for at least 2 years. It went on more than that. Sorry, my white balance is hating this. But, you know, I really learned, you know, how important it is to take notes, even if it's just quick and dirty kind of things, of just jotting down names and places and factoids. But for this particular campaign and with this character that I created, I really wanted to have take a sketchbook and create illustrations along the way, especially because we weren't playing in person, we were playing online, and that was kind of a great way to kind of use up extra time because it does, you know, the play time is different when you're playing via Discord and not in person. So I'm kind of able to sit there with all of my supplies and create illustrations and maps and doodle and draw and all that sort of stuff. So I knew early on going in I wanted to use a sketchbook. So this sketchbook is the Strathmore Mixed Media Softcover Sketchbook. It's the bigger guy, whatever this size is, I don't know. Like all of my other sketchbooks, I decided to load the front up with stickers, and you can see I have notes of where I wanted to come back and sort of add things, which maybe at some point I will still come back and do that, but that's where it is for right now. But my other sketchbooks that I have with just my artwork and illustrations, I always kind of fill the front with stickers, and that is what I've done here. You'll see that a number of the stickers that I have selected are kind of things that I think pertain to Rowan. She is very pastel goth, and I've got little witchy things and cauldrons and gemstones, all just fun stickers that I have collected either from dice purchases or things that people have sent me, or from my monthly Sticky Club subscription. That is a great place to use stickers, by the way, is in a D&D journal. This was sort of the invitation letter that we had gotten from our DM, which I printed out and put in here, and I had plans of kind of creating the head of the campaign title at the top here in like a header, but I just never got around to it. Moving right along, you'll see some of these pages are a little chaotic here. This was sort of just early notes for me as I was starting to build my character, both with kind of what pact I was going to be taking, kind of what my patron was, human variant details, all that sort of stuff. And you can see that I was also just using it as a swatch page, a place to dump things. This was sort of my early, I actually really hate this, but this was my early illustration of what I thought Rowan could look like. So although I hate this illustration, I did leave it in here, but this was sort of the general vibe of what I thought that she would look like, with the pink hair, and she had a small rose gold handled sickle and her little wand, and then she had tattoos up her arm, which she gets one tattoo for each birthday. So on her 21st birthday, as she begins her rite of passage, she has 21 little tattoos on her. There's some little magical, spooky things happening here. She's definitely like creepy, cute pastel goth vibes. I think this is a hot mess. At some point I wanted to redo it, but I feel like you get the general idea. Moving on to the next page, this is also a bit of a hot mess because this was something that I was going to create kind of like my other player notes here, especially as we're getting to know each other in the beginning. We also had a session 0, of course, of just kind of getting to know each other and, an initial sort of sit down thing. So this was kind of like my messy notes of, I think this is where I want these things to live, but I'm not sure. Really not a whole lot to show off here other than just really messy notes. I wish I had created a more dedicated space for other player notes, because I think that would have been really fun to have more like illustrative fonts and stuff like that for my other, not teammates, but the other player names. I think could have been fun. As I creep into more sessions, you can see that I'm starting to now drift into illustrations, and I'm starting to pull some more supplies with colors and whatnot. I also made the decision to circle locations so that it would be easy for me to just quick flip and be able to just gaze over my page and see location names, because I feel like that's always something that I need whenever I'm flipping back to stuff. I had other notes over here that was part of my session 0, and then this was my pregame DM meeting, so I started back over here. It just was really messy in the beginning, but you'll see I sort of settle into a format as I move forward. This was also just some random little pages that I wanted to be able to flip back to, hence why they have little bookmarks on them at the end. Of course, they're like pastel goth, cute little things with my disco tape. I love this disco tape, by the way. It is on Amazon. It's in my Amazon favorites if you want to go check that out. And then of course the little moon sticker, again from some month of my sticky subscription. One of the things that Rowan has is that she wears a black velvet cloak, and that is again part of her rite of passage. Basically, the elders in her coven give her this cloak as she begins her journey, and along her journey she embroiders little images that tell her story. So as I was going along through the campaign, I was coming back to my cloak, which again I still need to finish outlining this. I was coming back to this page and writing down kind of what the images were that were going to be on my cloak, because that is something later on I wanted to maybe illustrate or even attempt to embroider myself. And so along with kind of each little image note, I also put a page number so that I could flip to whatever the page was and recall that tale, that story that had happened. I did go back and start putting page numbers in as I got into more campaign, like as I got into more sessions, I did number things, and I found that that was really easy, especially for pages like this, where I needed to make a quick reference of like what happened, how I got this thing, which is the other thing happening on this page, shit that Rowan has gathered. This was basically, she's a little bit of a hoarder, which is I feel like a trait that a lot of us D&D people love to put into our characters. I wanted to make sure that I had a list going of all the weird things that she collected, especially so that I could quick reference, come back and, you know, erase things as needed if I gave something away or lost it, or if I wanted to take a look at something that I had. So these were very helpful. I really need to finish outlining that, but who knows if I will at this point. Moving into further sessions, you can see now I'm in session 3 and 4, and I'm starting to settle into a bit more of a format, and that is that I create this sort of larger bold header at the top. I make notes as I go, and then I stop and sketch things wherever need be. And I kind of just let the session kind of dictate what it is that I was going to be sketching. And sometimes I would be sketching in the moment, and other times I would kind of just take a post-it and put a post-it down and write notes for what I wanted to come back and draw, and then I would come back and draw it another time. Over on my Patreon, actually, I have a number of D&D Journal with me videos where it's me going back and creating those illustrations. So if you're interested in seeing more of kind of the artwork process of how I create some of these pages, including page planning, that is over on Patreon. This was another session. This happened on Halloween, and this was actually really fun because I started to not only draw, you know, from imagery that was happening in the session in the game, but even what was happening in real life. So, you know, out of game, it was Halloween night that we were all playing together. So naturally, I wanted to add kind of like the oranges with the black stripes and really kind of make it a little bit more spooky. Something else you'll see too is that anytime I have kind of like a black square like this with just simple imagery in the middle, this is something that I have embroidered on my cloak. So I would create kind of that little illustration here, and then I would make note of what the page number was, and then come back to my cloak notes and add it there. So that became a really handy sort of helpful thing, especially just because it was an imagery based thing, to kind of have that consistent as I was taking notes. Got a little bit more messy in here as far as illustrations goes. You know, if you play D&D, you know every session is different. Sometimes a lot happens and it's hard to take notes, or sometimes you're really into the role playing that it's hard to pull out of that and sit and draw things. So this was just a very messy mix mosh of things happening here. A string of teeth. This was for one of the other characters, or one of my other players in the game. A rough little battle map here. Anytime that our DM would put up a battle map on Roll20, I would try to jot it down as quickly as I could, and then come back and document, or come back and fill it in rather, as needed. It's funny looking back at some of this, the crazy ass demon horse. We had some wild things happen in our campaign, as you would imagine. From a homebrew and a brilliant DM. This is my shout out and love to my DM. Filling in space. This was something that I also really like to do. Anytime there's bald space, I would come back and fill it in, even if it was just with a pen or whatever. This is also something really fun to do while you're playing in the game. If there's, you know, obviously if you're in a battle or something, there is always downtime once you've planned your move, and I can sit there and kind of just doodle to my heart's content. Really starting to settle into more of a format. Again, headers up at the top, and I would try to kind of get things looking a little bit more cohesive. I really think it starts, it really starts here. This is when I started to settle into this specific kind of page format of filling in larger spaces with illustrations, and this was something where I came back and filled it in. You know, I put a post-it note down of something that I wanted to illustrate, and I put it there, and I came back and filled it in. This is in a D&D Journal with me video on Patreon, so you can actually see that there. Creating some lilies. Again, here's that little embroidery thing. Sometimes just playing with font as a way to break up or fill up space is also really fun. And of course, things for my character, just filling in little doodles and things. So you can see I have like little embroidery needles. She was really big into sewing. That was kind of a trade of her coven. I also would make notes, important info, should something happen. I would try to really box things out so that I could come back and see it. Again, still circling locations as well. I really like these lilies. I like how this turned out. Quite pleased with that. Again, continuing with that format, you can see I'm really settled into it now, and I'm playing a lot with the headers. So this particular session, we were dealing with some giant worms, as you can see, some bone worms, I believe is what they were. So I created this kind of like wormy header, and using like the holes that they're kind of burrowing in and out of, taking a chunk of space and giving a little dedicated illustration to it. I also love capturing quotes, either quotes, things that other players say or that my DM says that is either funny or that just is something that I just want to take note of. I love creating little kind of highlight areas for that, whether it's like a little inset or like a little box or something with a tag, with, like you can see back here, I kind of did a similar sort of thing. This was something that was happening in real life. So sometimes I like to make notes of that too. Like, hey, we played this the first night of this, or this is what was going on in the world, or whatever. But sometimes I just like to put fun quotes in here. They don't have much in terms of senses beyond bloodlust. Yes, anything creepy, you know I'm going to be all over that. Here's the next session. You can see I went with this sort of like crazy yellow-red vibe happening here off of these giant eggs that we had seen. These were giant spider eggs that were within a body, and I used that to kind of also create, space fillers for things. We were within a giant skeleton that was sort of underground, so I was trying to kind of create that little bit of a map happening here and using the bones kind of as the header text as well. I also make note too what session number it is, what date it was, and then I make a note of who was there, who of our group was playing or not, because sometimes it's helpful to go back and be like, oh, that was the night that so-and-so was there, or that was the night that there was only 2 of us playing, or whatever it is. But yeah, you also see I put in a fortune cookie thing too. I think I had gotten that fortune cookie that night. Oh yeah, I did. Whoa, this just happened to be the fortune cookie I opened up in the middle of our game. You have strong spiritual powers. You should choose to develop them. Go me. All right, session 11. You can see this was when we battled a giant spider. So I went full ham and illustrated this giant nasty spider here. This is in a D&D Journal with me video on Patreon. So if you want to see me create this guy, that is over there. And I went crazy with filling in this space with all of this webbing, which was obviously incredibly time consuming getting all of that in there. But I'm really pleased with how this giant spider turned out. He's mostly illustrated with watercolor and acrylic ink, and the background is also a water-based paint. What is the background? The background might be ink too, actually. I use acrylic ink quite a bit, so that is that. And you can see I also love to take notes of when I cast certain things for the first time. This was also the first time that I was playing a spellcaster. In my previous campaign, I was a tiefling barbarian and had little to no magical skills whatsoever. So this was also a really fun campaign for me, being able to cast spells and be in the magical side of things. Moving right along, we have session 12 and session 13. Some unfinished work happening down here. Obviously some fun, like just little illustrated space fillers. We've got some more embroidery popping up. But down here, we had leveled up, pardon my language, but this is my personal journal. It is what it is. I had created spaces of where I was going to create my new spells. So like obviously I have the spell cards that live in my little players sheet over here, but I wanted to illustrate them here inside of my journal for when I acquired them. And a couple of them as well, I was changing the names of them. So for example, I was taking on the spell Tasha's Hideous Laughter, but I decided to basically what's the word I'm trying to say? I decided to give it the cosmetic, or the skin rather, of Rowan's Infinite Sadness. So this can be a really fun thing to do, by the way. Ask your DM if you can add a cosmetic and just change the name of your spell and have something, different happen, which I felt like this was really fitting for my character, to just make someone really, really emo to deal damage, which I think is a good time. But I had intended on going back and adding little illustrations in here and kind of writing describing what the spells were for each one. I did add these little stickers in, again, from Sticky, which is really fun. Great way to use up stickers. I must have just, I think because I leveled up, I just decided to keep kind of all the colors the same. When in doubt, you'll see me kind of default to this pink and black combo because that is kind of the vibe of my character. Okay, we have session 14. 14, 15, I think, because this was all kind of in the same location, the same thing was going on. This was when I used Devil Sight for the first time, which was kind of like such a game changer, by the way. And that is why I did all of these crazy eyeballs with horns, because that just kind of was the visual in my mind for the Devil's Sight spell. And we kind of really didn't move or change locations in these two sessions, so I just kept them across the same page, which I think actually works out really well. So you just have that bold little header change there. I love doing this sort of cursive-y thing, just using a black brush pen. Really basic up here, and you can see that I was, when I was out sick, I make note of that. It's crazy, this was all, oh my gosh, this was all last January. Crazy. Lots of sessions mushed into one here. So even though I might not be creating kind of larger illustrations, I will at least take the time to create a header or create some sort of illustration to break up the sessions. So we were at a bar in this particular one. Again, just using kind of my little spooky stickers that I have and just big letter, you know, brush pen calligraphy. I'd gotten this moon stamp from a Sticky month, and it was like perfect for this thing here. So you'll see that stamp quite a bit. Now I believe this is my last one. Yes, this was my last session 23. Is that right? Oh my God, we played a lot. Session 23 was the last session that I had played. So I have not played D&D since last March, which makes me very sad, but that is life, yo. For this particular one, we were in a new town, the Bellows Whale, and it was sort of underground and very complex map. So I kind of created the map, and these were the different stores that we were kind of visiting along the way. My DM had taken the time to really describe this place so well and all of these little different stores that we were going to. So I wanted to kind of pay homage to that and create kind of little signs that would be outside of each store basically, as well as just a really loose version of the map and a bit of a header too. This whole page here and even into some of this where I was kind of planning where things were going to go, again using some of that acrylic ink to create really fun stainy-y headers. This whole thing, as far as like planning your page and planning your header, which is really helpful for kind of any sort of illustration sketchbook stuff, there's a whole video of this over on my Patreon as well, so you can check out how I plan this and get these transferred and sketch them out, and it's a very beefy video. But yeah, that is the end of that session. You can see I had a little bit of a post-it note, I think that was probably living over here on this page, and I just never continued. But that is the end of my D&D journal for now. Of course, if I have, you know, any time that I can get back into playing D&D again, I hope to do so. It's just hard when you've got a little baby toddler going around. But I at least wanted to take some time to share my D&D journal with all of you. And just capture this moment, capture this place of my D&D journal progress. As I've mentioned a couple times already, if you want more D&D journal content, specifically like the art related things, that is over on my Patreon. There is a link down below. I have a couple more D&D videos. You can go and check those out. I will put those links down below. Beyond that, because I'm not playing D&D, unfortunately I don't really have any other D&D content to share, minus if you just want to see my giant hoard of dice, which we can also go there. We can go there. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my D&D journal flip. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe for more creative content here on my channel, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!